So as companies are considering this new customer experience and their product offering, how can they do that?
Well, there are four ways. Part of what they can do is to really think about what I call same stuff to same people.
Okay.
So it's the same products and the same services to the customers that have been the ones we've been serving.
Probably my core business.
Exactly. And in the old days, that was our, quote, cash cow. So it's like, oh, well, we've always got, let's say we're Ford Motor Company, and we know that we have our current Ford customers, and we know that they're either going to buy another car or have their car fixed. But we could count on them in the old days. But now, as we said about one attribute, there can be a lot more fickleness on the part of our current customers, like overnight. So we have to be on the lookout for signs that there is something coming into the onto the radar of our customers now that makes us a little bit vulnerable. So the same things to the same people might require different skills to just keep them coming. As I said about the economy, if something starts to seem expensive in an economy that's challenging, you might lose customers quickly before you can really do anything about it.
So what else do we look at?
You can also look at different stuff, different products and services to the same customers. And I think that that's where you start looking at signs of the hamburger and the bun and the ketchup and the fries. What goes with that thing that we are currently selling them? What I think is great about it is if you look at a company like IBM that used to be in the stuff business and evolved into the service business, they started realizing that the stuff was almost becoming a commodity. It was almost an also-ran, whereas the service of getting all the stuff to work and the insights from the data and the ability to look at information in different ways was where the value was coming from. Mm-hmm. So in that case, you're offering slightly different stuff to the same customer base.
So they're same customers. They're, the IT departments of large organizations typically, who used to probably pride themselves on getting the best deal on hardware, now prides themselves on being the expert in the services that support the organization's IT infrastructure.
That's exactly right. And what's great about that is you've got your customers as almost your instant focus group. And not just, you don't even have to ask them. You can look at social media and start tracking with really interesting tools these days what people are talking about even when you're not talking to them. So what kinds of conversations are your customers already having that give you insights? So for instance, there was a vodka company that saw a few years ago a trend toward home infusion of vodka. So people were just kind of blogging about, putting pineapple in their vodka and soaking it. And they started realizing that there might be a market there and started testing it with their current customers. And sure enough, huge market.
So what about when we look at different customers?
So that's a great example. And let's think about the mobile phone or the smartphone. So adults might use it in your current customer base for one set of reasons. It might be that in the old days, they would text back and forth to work and, sort of have transactions. But as soon as different customers enter the market, like kids, well, suddenly you needed games and, Angry Birds. And it became something that you couldn't just take an older customer and cut them in half and say that that's what a child wants. It's a completely different value proposition. It's something very different that is important to that customer. And so that's why a lot of times people fail, because they think that everyone wants the same thing out of their product or service. But when you move into a new customer base, the attributes of what's important to the new customer might not even mildly resemble what the old customer had wanted.
And this sounds especially important when we move to the last quadrant, which is a different product and a different customer, because we're moving into spaces where we don't understand the customer as well as we have our existing or the new product offering, and the ability to be flexible in terms of what that offering looks like seems really important here.
Yeah, there's an approach that people use called rapid prototyping and experimenting, and it's really, really important. I'll give you a great example, and I love the fact that State Farm admitted that they had no way of figuring out why people that needed insurance, the younger professionals, just weren't buying it. And what they found out is that, ironically, young people didn't want to be sold to. That insurance salesman, it was like a used car salesman. And so what happened was they had to be very humble and think, instead of, why don't they want our insurance? They need it. It makes sense logically. It was, honestly, they're saying that they don't want an insurance salesman to sell them anything, and they're young, but wait a minute, why don't we observe what they are needing? And what they were needing was peace of mind about financial issues. They have huge student loans, a lot of them. You know, there's a whole set of issues around their overall finances that are really important. And what they do naturally is not walk into an insurance agent and ask for a policy like in the 60s. Instead, what they do is they want to have comfortable conversations where no one's going to try to sell them anything. And they're used to buying a lot of things online, you know, in comparison shopping. So next door is an experiment where State Farm does not sell insurance. And if you walk into it, there's a prototype in Chicago that's really great to walk into. You walk into it, no one's selling insurance, but there are community billboards about conversations. They have one-on-one mentoring about finances. They have natural conversations that start up over coffee about how are you going to pay your student loans back, young families that sort of come and hang out together. So it's a true community center. It just happens to be sponsored by State Farm. But guess what? They're getting a lot of brand loyalty, and when a decision is made about insurance, there'll already be that relationship that's comfortable.